Yeah. Oh, yes. No testing required. Hi, Michael. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah. It's about 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. There's different type of events. No, like throughout all the city. Yep. Throughout the city. Yep. By the Australian Institute of Architects, State Library, Queensland Government, and then just little events like this, and yeah. So welcome everyone to this evening's event here titled Revitalising Racecourse Road. Before we get started, I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the Turrbal people, traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. This evening's event is presented by Comore and is part of the Asia Pacific Architecture Festival, which you might have just heard us talking about with Tim. Comore is a public relations and communications company based in Brisbane that engages in collaboration, coordination, community, and connection. The Asia Pacific Architecture Festival is a partnership between Architecture Media, which is a subsidiary of the Australian Institute of Architects, and the State Library of Queensland and the Queensland Government. For more information, please go to their website. It's asiapacificarchitecturefestival.com. Very simple to remember. There are some tremendous events through there, and the theme for the festival this year is around connection and sustainability, culture, and the economy. The sponsor for this event tonight is Focus Construct. And my name is Ben Topham, for those who don't know me, and I'm currently the Director of Client Services for Focus. I was talking earlier, might have been to Noel actually, that I did a Masters in Economics, but my thesis was on basically the economic impact on commercial property using evidence-based design architecture. So this type of evening and these types of potential projects at Racecourse Road are quite dear to me. And I'm really excited to hear what our expert panel has to say tonight. Focus Construct is a smart commercial construction company that is based in Brisbane, and our focus is on refurbishment and fit-outs and new build projects. And we are really proud to be here tonight. I'd also like to thank the church, St Augustine's Anglican Church, for hosting us here. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting, and we thank you for that. The format of tonight's proceedings is that of a panel discussion. We will take some Q&A from the audience at the end, and dare I say that the panellists this evening really don't need an introduction. You can see from my face, I'm not young with my grey beard, but I'm not too old either. And growing up, these three in particular have had a massive influence over our city and over this state. So I'll introduce our panellists before we start and kick off into the questions. So on my far right here is Dr. Noel Robinson. Noel is also an adjunct professor of architecture at QUT. Noel is the founder and managing director of the NRA Collaborative, and several of his recent awarded projects include the Domic at Sunshine Beach and the Brisbane Sky Tower at Mary Street in Brisbane. Noel is a Life Fellow of the Australian Institute of Architects and chairs a number of design and peer review panels for local authorities in Queensland. Noel has led a distinguished international career in private practice. He's a recipient of numerous architecture awards, including the Prime Minister's Centenary Medal for services to architecture in the Australian Honours in 2001. Noel was a leader and an early mover in sustainable and regenerative design from the 1970s through until the present, through climatically responsive design. And to Michael's comment, I was born in the 70s, but a very close friends of ours always talked highly of you, Noel. Ralph Bailey talked very highly of you and your sustainability in your design. In the middle here, I'll split the architects to the economist / politician, Tim Nicholls MP, the member for Clayfield. Tim is the state MP for Clayfield, and he has been MP since winning the seat in 2006 and has been elected 6 times in that seat. From 2000 to 2006, Tim was a councillor for the Hamilton ward here for Brisbane City Council and was elected twice to that position. And that's where I had a little bit to do with Tim when I was in City Hall. Prior to representing politics, being a representative in politics, Tim was a solicitor and a senior associate at a large Queensland-based law firm specialising in commercial and property law, if you didn't know that. Tim has had many roles. He was the Lord Mayor's finance spokesperson in council, the deputy leader of the Liberal Party, deputy leader of the Liberal National Party, the LNP, treasurer and minister for trade from 2012 to 15, and leader of the LNP opposition from May 2016 to December 2017. In his most recent term, he's chaired the Parliamentary Crime and Corruption Committee, overseeing the work of the CCC, and was also the deputy chair of the Parliament's Ethics Committee from 2018 to 2020. Tim is now the Shadow Attorney General and the Shadow Minister for Justice and the Shadow Minister for CBD Activation 2020. He promotes many clubs and organisations in his electorate of Clayfield. Tim is also a Rotary Paul Harris Fellow for dedicated service, and he lives just up the road at Hendra. He's married to Mary, who's an OT, and has 3 children. And finally, our third panellist, Michael Rayner, AM. It's a bit shorter. Is the director of Blight, Rayner Architecture, and who's currently designing the new performing arts venue, which is brilliant, and the National Rugby Training Centre at Ballymore, which we would hope to build. His practice is involved... I know. Well, no, the Women's Training Centre, I had a meeting with Daniel Herbert the other day, so we're going to see what happens. His practice is involved with the Olympic and Paralympic Games and legacy projects, as well as business cases for potential revitalisation projects. Michael is also an adjunct professor at the University of Queensland and at Griffith Uni, and a past president of the Australian Institute of Architects Queensland chapter. He's a member of the Queensland Government Urban Design Panel and Places Panel and the Brisbane City Council's Urban Futures Board. Could you all please help me and welcome our 3 panellists this evening? So the full title of tonight's event is Revitalising Racecourse Road, Balancing Cultural Preservation, Sustainable Development and Economic Growth Through Design. And these topics tie into this overarching theme for the festival. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Noel, we've got a few points here before we open up to the floor. The first question, Noel, or discussion points, is how can architecture and design contribute to the preservation of cultural heritage in Racecourse Road while still accommodating for modern needs and trends that are coming through?
Good question. I think that Racecourse Road's quite an interesting little piece of urban fabric. It's a leftover part of this suburb. It is a road, and as such a road, this particular road is a distributor that actually brings a lot of local traffic through onto Kingston Smith Drive. It's actually got a few issues, and if you start with the word road, you can already picture that cars have a priority. Racecourse Road has always been low intensity, and it is subject to traffic issues. It's actually getting worse to get out onto Kingston Smith Drive. It clogs up, and there are a number of reasons for that, and it's actually occurred worse since Kingston Smith Drive has been finished. I won't go into all the reasons why it is, but it's a priority road of a distributor. It's not a pedestrian street. Now, there was a time back when Andy Stenders, who was an urban designer and architect, was involved in preparing the Racecourse Road planning scheme. And it actually set the trend for the uses that are here now. And the idea then, it was not to have wall-to-wall cafes and boulevard from that point of view. And that's why it is now quite a disjointed street with areas of residential and retailing and food and beverage. And it actually doesn't work too badly, to be quite honest. It gets a lot of use, and I think the latest offerings across the road here that some of you might have eaten in actually sets a good scene to have a wider footpath where people can actually sit outside and enjoy having a meal outside in this fantastic weather that we have here in Brisbane. And so I think when you look at Racecourse Road, it's a mixture of a lot of things, and it's to do basically with passing traffic. It's not like Hastings Street in Noosa. It's a dead end, and that's got like 20 kilometres an hour, and there is a lot of street activity. This doesn't happen here. It's actually broken up, and I think that's not a bad thing. I mean, when Andy did the plan, I don't know, it must be 20 years ago. Yeah, 1988. I thought there should have been more retail and more continuity, but as it's turned out, there's been these interlude of residential buildings down the street and or mixed use, like the one up at Beatrice Terrace that's just recently been built. And I think what it has is a scale. It's about not being tall, and it's being a community scale that people don't feel intimidated by the heights of buildings. And I think probably the one up at Beatrice Terrace and Racecourse is about as high as you should really push Racecourse Road. So there's somebody's going for a 7-storey one across the road. They're not? No, that's right. The scale and intensity, it'll bring off a lot of traffic and whatever else, but it's the human scale that I think Racecourse Road can really keep. I mean, I think we've also got to think about what the boundaries of Racecourse Road are. I look at Racecourse Road going to the racecourse from Kingston Smith Drive. Now that the racecourse is actually developing within there, there's a thought process that the influence should go inside that development. I won't talk about that development just yet, I'll talk about that later, but the issue is that to me is the traditional length of Racecourse Road, and that's what we probably should talk about tonight.
Michael, I might just ask you, how can architecture design contribute to the preservation of the cultural heritage in Racecourse Road?
You do have to answer that question, don't you, as it comes out. Look, I just wrote down some things, and I'm not a local, and I don't really come to Racecourse Road that often, so take my remarks as observations. But I like to start with what's good about it and what's not so good about it. Treescape, fantastic to me. Heritage, fantastic. Well, probably also distinguishing from other streets that are really good retail or cafe streets. So I'm comparing those and saying treescapes here probably the best of the main streets that I know of. Heritage, there are many. If I took Boundary Street, West End, which is roughly close to where I live, it's got some good heritage too. West Village is very successful there. You know, everyone that's been there would know that it's really successful in itself. But it's stripped the life out of the rest of Boundary Street. So the rest of Boundary Street's cafes are closing, or the result of that. So it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. And to me, and you know, this is probably where people are not going to agree to a degree, I don't know, I think it lacks character, Racecourse Road. It's not memorable. It doesn't have anything in it that's memorable, which could be an architectural aspect, but it doesn't have that for people outside Racecourse Road to think, I'll go there, I picture it. It's not picturable to most people, unlike the James Street. It lacks variety. The pockets that Noel talked about have great similarities to them, so I'm only commenting from the point of view if you want to bring more life to it. If you want to preserve it as it is, fine. I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. But if you do want to rejuvenate it economically, which is part of the question, there's an old saying, if you're standing still, you're going backwards. So if you are just preserving it for the sake of it, that's fine from many aspects, but it's not fine if you want the economy to thrive along Racecourse Road. So variety is important. The pavements and so on, street furniture are incredibly ordinary. Streets like this, if they're going to become more revitalised, they have to have a cohesion of their street furniture, pavements, quality and all those things, which happens in Grey Street, South Bank, for instance. So somebody has to spend some money to bother to create the impression that things are changing and it's not just lying stagnant. It's long, as we've been discussed, so I think probably can only work in pockets. It's not a Lygon Street in Melbourne that can go for miles and miles because it's not really in a city. So I don't think the pockets is an issue, is a big problem, except they just lack the variety that I mentioned, and they all look very similar. I can't comment on car parking, but I presume it's a huge issue for the area. And I don't think heights is really the issue. To keep heights down low, the village atmosphere is good. Although I keep thinking about misnomers, you know, when people call things West Village, and we all think, oh, village, that means something low scale, it's really lovely and pretty and so on, and someone calls something like West Village a village, and it's 20 stories. So the word village is pretty much meaningless these days in urban design speak. So they're the things that are good, not so good. The things, in addition, that are great are what's happening around, which, whether you love it or not, I think they're great for Racecourse Road, and that's the Athletes Village and further development in the North Shore Hamilton zone, which will bring lots more population to activate Racecourse Road, if Racecourse Road is attractive to be in. The airport and airport renewal and its position between the city and the airport is really valuable to Racecourse Road, potentially Albion Sports Precinct as well. These at least mean there's high amounts of urban renewal happening around on all sides of Racecourse Road, which, yes, will bring population, but also will bring a sense that this is the central part of a much larger context of urban renewal, which I think is really good for it. And probably the relatively narrow width, while it leads to congestion problems that Noel mentioned, also is a really good scale of street, which most other high streets don't have, so I'd be capitalising on that. Just quickly from a design point of view, I think you need a catalyst or two to get things going, and I guess I looked at it 10 years ago when I was working on Eagle Farm a long time ago. So this is still the same to me 10 years later, where nobody's bitten the bullet to do something terrific. And my example of that is my firm did James Street Market in James Street, and it was a small, modest building in a street that really didn't know what it wanted to be. But I'm pretty sure that James Street Market is the catalyst for everything else that's happened since, that's led all the way up to the Carlisle Hotel now. And it was a $3 million project. Yes, it was 2003, but really cheap. It used tilt-up construction, very industrial in its nature, but actually people really like going to that kind of place rather than something incredibly plush. That industrial aesthetic is really quite appealing. So you don't have to spend a lot of money, but you do need someone to bite the bullet and say, yeah, I'll have a go at doing a James Street Market type project that changes what I mentioned as that memory of place. Think of James Street, think of James Street Market, think of Racecourse Road, think of this thing that someone has bothered to try and create there. So how that happens, I'm not sure. It's an investment thing. Who wants to be the first off to take a risk? I don't know. Maybe it's a government / council thing that becomes a kind of JV that gets that going, but I really think it needs a new piece of design work that everyone can image and then start small, like James Street Market, and it will evolve over time and it won't happen overnight.
Thanks, Michael. Michael, that was excellent. And Tim?
Well, I think Racecourse Road suffers from being the first of the suburban centre improvement programs that was put in place, and Sally Ann Atkinson was the Lord Mayor when it came in 1988. And it was the first that was done, and then subsequently you have seen things like Oxford Street at Bulimba and a number of other similar types of development, and they've got better as they've gone along, I think. The other difficulty with which both Michael and Noel have touched on is the length of the road itself. So it's a kilometre from what used to be affectionately called the Beirut end, down where the Hamilton Hotel is, up to the Paris end where the racetrack now is. And so the lack of a unifying theme over the whole strip is something that I think the street has struggled with over a lengthy period of time. What that means is that as a destination, and I agree with Michael about this, is it doesn't stand out in your mind. It's liked by locals, but other than that, it's really not very widely known. And the development that's been here has tended just to be what we can squeeze into the place and where we can maximise a return rather than actually looking at the street as a whole. I think the one opportunity that I see at the moment is up on the corner of Racecourse Road and Lancaster Road, which is the old site on the corner there, which has real potential because it's got some mass about it, it's got some size about it, and it's got some potential there that I think can be used to create both an entrance into the street and also a reason for coming to the street. And so that will be a challenge. I know that site's been proposed for various different developments over the last decade or so. So I think that's another challenge that the street faces. And the opportunity is there now with the completion of Kingsford Smith Drive and that big plaza on the other side of the road to create that connectivity through to the public transport facility there, so through the ferry terminal and that great huge plaza there, which in my view is totally underutilised at the moment. So I think there are a variety of those issues that do add to the challenges and the complexity of Racecourse Road. And I think there is one overwhelming problem, and that is that there is no single authority that is taking charge of it and saying, we now recognise that Racecourse Road needs revitalisation. It's tired, it is, and it needs some work put on it, and we are going to lead the charge by engaging with the community and with experts to see where we can come up with, and that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. We might revisit that because I was going to maybe revisit that catalyst idea and design and that theme in the pockets. We might revisit that later, or if any people from the audience have questions on that. The second point here for discussion is, in what ways can sustainable design principles be incorporated into the regeneration of Racecourse Road, and what benefits can they bring to the community and environment?
There's a lot of sustainable principles, and the word sustainability has sort of been overtaken now by regenerative. And the thing is, when you're doing new building, it can generate energy and make a new focus on the way that you, sorry, the pun about the sponsor. but the thing about sustainability, it's about designing for climate. And this street is ideal to do that. As I mentioned again, the development across the road, it's got this nice wide area where there's a public interface, there's activity going on, and it develops a sense of community. The thing about the length of it, there's traffic leaking into the residential, all those sorts of things. You've got to start to tackle the traffic issue right now, because at this end of the street it gets quite congested. People run into this end of the street to get into the queue to get into Kingsford Smith Drive, and you know the line can be right up past the church in the morning. there's a couple of ways of fixing that up. One is to get the timing onto Kingston Smith Drive a bit wider, so another few seconds, and you'll get more cars out, which will reduce that sort of queuing problem that's in the street. The other one is you can look at some of these rat-run streets, like the street down here next to the council office and library. That could become a cul-de-sac because people cut down there and stops everybody keeping a continuous line. And the other thing basically is to look at how people park. These developments, there's not enough room on a number of the sites to have big underground car parks, which will be needed if there's height. And there's not enough room in the street to put any more trees or widen or increase the amount of car parking in the street. So car parking is a really big issue for the future development. And I think that because it's a distributor, is everybody's going to continue to use it. I don't think we can think that it's going to be any less used at a later stage. Everybody that gets an opportunity to build onto the street needs to provide a proper parking solution. And so that, the church has got a great parking solution and it's got a great open space, so it's fine. But a number of the others, the council will just need to look at how to deal with the on-street parking and off-street parking, because unless you've got a corner site, you've got to go through your site. A lot of the sites are very narrow, so there's got to be an idea if the project is worthy of it to try and amalgamate things. The other thing that's occurring in the land use, we're starting to get quite a bit of medical in the street, and I think that it does need a mix of uses to bring people here. And it also needs activities that go through the day. So there needs to be, medical starts at a certain time, finishes. The restaurants start at a certain time and finish. But I think the activity in the street's really important. And the sense of community, they do need it. Like Michael, I agree with Michael. This area here could have some markets in it, the church in particular, this area. But I think the thing about getting some very good quality architecture that has generated development potential, such as James Street. And I mean, just the building that Michael did down there, I'm not sure what it's called. What's that building on James Street, the cafe? You did one. You did one in the front there. Crew Bar. Crew Bar works really fantastic because it's open to the street. People interact with the street, and people. It's friendly. If you get barriers and there's things, crime and stuff happens. But the thing about Michael's project is that it opens the street up and works really well. And things like that on Racecourse Road would improve its community spirit and profitability. There are some more retail up at the end of the street, menswear, X-rays and all those sorts of things. And the grilled burger and stuff, that's another little hub. Seems to work pretty well. It's got its car parking out of the way, so it doesn't bleed car parking into the edges of the streets. So I think trying to get a better mix, set up a group to actually look at this area, as Tim suggested, I think is really important, that all these things can be worked upon. And as I mentioned before, the scale of the development is really important. I don't think this is not an area here that should have tall buildings or even 7-storey buildings. There needs to be a domestic and human scale to this street as it moves forward, because it really can't take massive development because of its traffic.
Thank you. Noel made a really good point about the thing, and I guess it comes to design guidelines, how you go about it with this group that hopefully gets together, because it's not going to happen unless a series of experts get together. Not those guidelines, I look at the cafes across the road, there's 10 metres of dreary Siebel chairs leading to a constant line of facades. It's not activation, it's terribly passé. and if it stays like that, this Racecourse Road is a goner. Places like the Crew Bar, but there's other ones in Newstead now, bring their frontages to the street, but they also can feel very external. So I'm just trying to make that point that you don't need to set things back and say that's the inside and that's the outside. You can design so that the frontage feels garden-esque, if you like, and might have roof lights and all sorts of things, but at least you're bringing people right onto the street edge, which is an activator. At the moment you can't see anybody sitting back in some restaurant in its depth, so I'd be certainly putting in, and it is a sustainability answer, it's not just a design answer, because that leads to better climatic control of those kind of spaces rather than having, here's the air-conditioned bit and here's the outside bit. If it's done right, it's a mixed mode type thing which can use ventilation and some mechanical ventilation depending on the time of day. So that's been quite specific, but I'm kind of getting to that thing of what guidelines set up frontages to the street that feel far more activated and feel more appealing to people than the kind of typology that we've got there now. It's not good, it's ramshackle. Secondly, I'd probably try and do something really amazing, like hit up the government or whatever to turn the right.
It's not amazing, everyone tries that.
Yeah. No, the amazing bit's the bit I'm about. Hey, but what if, I was just thinking aloud in my head, that's all. What if it was Brisbane's first solar road? In other words, you repaved the whole street.
Things like that.
It energised all the electric cars that are going along it. The trees, to me, that you've got out there, well, one thing I'd say is it's incredibly dark at night. Its lighting is just appalling. So I feel like I'm in a dungeon when I turn into the street, to be frank. And then you've got the number of streets wrapped in sort of little fairy lights, which does nothing for the tree and doesn't celebrate the treescape, because all I can see is the lights, which might as well be on some sort of steel structure, not on a tree. So I would uplight all the trees, because that's your greatest asset. It looks fantastic. The canopies are amazing. But why isn't all the trees in the street being uplit in a beautiful way with beautiful gardens below them? And then that might cost something, and I think, it's an energy sap. But hey, what if this solar road, all the way on the street, energised all of that uplighting and all the lighting you had, and you got a fame for creating this first somewhat experimental road, but it's not an unproven technology. China's doing it well, and so therefore it's something first about Racecourse Road that no other street has yet done, and let's do it in this street because it's got massive amounts of sunlight because of its low scale coming into it. It's probably ideal, and that would, to me, would be a really fantastic sustainability bigger measure. So I'm probably saying two things really. One is do some amazing sustainability measures for the whole street, which is what I just mentioned, and then do a set of guidelines for when developments do happen, that they all contribute to a larger sustainability goal collectively by the way that architecture is created. So I think you've got to have both things happening at once. But there has to be some kind of agreed vision of owners that, yes, this is a great thing to create this kind of response to climate, as Noel mentioned, and to streetscape that no other street's kind of done. Because unless you do that, you're just going to be second best to another pretty good street in Brisbane.
So Tim, maybe in 12, 18 months' time, we might be knocking on your door for some solar money.
Well, I was going to put a political pitch in there, but I won't do that because we're in church as well. So, which I must say, I first came to as a 13-year-old as a server here, so that was quite a while ago. I think the beauty of this, the beauty of the street, which has been identified, is the trees and the trees that are now mature that were put in 20 years ago. When I was the councillor, we actually had a program to whack another 20 trees in to try and get a bit more of that spirit through here, and also the grounds. I mean, grounds like the grounds here at St Augustine's are just magnificent. And I think it really does lend itself for the whole street to that vision of sustainability where you don't need to have air conditioning and plate glass windows in anodised frames looking out onto the street all the time. It probably, in my experience, works pretty well at places like the now renamed Victory Lane 150 Baguette, which really does open up, and the side windows open up, and the trees that are right out the front really do provide that opportunity, and it works perfectly well in summer as it does in winter as well. So there are all those great opportunities that are right here. I think the constraint with it is, as Noel has pointed out, is it is still a major district access road, and traffic is directed onto Racecourse Road. It's deliberately directed onto Racecourse Road. If you go to the bottom of Crescent Road, you can't turn right out of Crescent Road, which you could a decade and a half ago. If you come along Kingsford Smith Drive, you can't turn right as you once were able to do. And the direct decision of council is to go down that path, and that is to the benefit of the residents who live in the surrounding streets. So that is the measuring up of that degree of amenity with people as well, so that other than Anthony Street and going over the back of the hill and down past Cooksley Street and down onto KSD at Cameron Rocks, the really only other way you can get onto Kingsford Smith Drive is Racecourse Road, and that is a deliberate decision in order to ensure that traffic flows on district access roads that are geared for that type of traffic and not going through local roads where people live. Yep. No, so if you're coming from Henry, you come down across the railway line, you come Zillman, Kitchener, left, right and go that way, or you go right onto Oriel Road and up to Sandgate Road. So it is a collector, and it will continue for as long as we still like our cars. It will continue to fulfil that role, I would suggest, because there's no practical alternative.
Yep. I mean, that brings it down to the point whether or not you should get some shared zones up the street so that pedestrians do have some additional rights of passage across, and where it might slow the traffic up. The traffic level at the moment at 40 k's is probably the right level. I don't think you can make it any slower. There are a number of people that tell me that they nearly get hit going across the pedestrian crossings, and maybe there can be a study up the street of how you can actually do some shared zones where it might slow it down a bit more, but it's quite slow as you get down to this end, and it's going to get worse as the area develops. You've still got all the apartments being developed up at the racecourse, and they're going to impact on the street. They do, fortunately, have another exit onto Nudgee Road, so if anybody's going north, that's good up there, but if they're coming south, they'll just add to the traffic count down the street. But it's a wonderful street, and I'm sure we can all get something to happen there collectively that will keep everybody happy.
Tim, I might direct the third question to you to start with. What economic opportunities can be generated through the regeneration of Racecourse Road, and how can design help to maximise their potential while, I suppose, minimising the negative impacts?
I think the economic opportunities flow in a couple of ways. A busier and more popular road that is a destination obviously is better for the existing businesses that are there, and it's been, I think, somewhat exaggerated, but it has been a theme that there have been a number of vacant shops for a lengthy period of time along the strip, and some of that has been as a result of redevelopment along the strip. We saw where Coles is, and all the shops along there were out of action for a period of time while that was being redeveloped. We've seen some of the older buildings, so where the coffee club is, which has now been out of operation for a year, I would think, and it's got a lease. It's got a lease signed there, but I'm yet to see it operative. So I think there have been a few of those issues that have occurred because it's no longer as popular a destination as it once was, even amongst locals, and competition is increasing. As Noel has said, the new developments at the track now go around, and there is a new development there with Woolworths and others that is another attractor that is moving people away from this area. You're having the marketplace at the bottom of Frodsham Street, opposite the McDonald's at the end of Cooksley Street, at the end of Crosby Road, is another attractor that's taking people away. So you want to draw customers back here. These shops do not exist in a vacuum. They must have paying customers if they are going to survive. Customers require a modern and welcoming retail environment, ease of access, that's going to be parking in this part of the world, and a pleasant atmosphere. And more than one thing to do, I think, is the other aspect as well. What does that lead to? Well, it provides greater economic opportunities for the owners. So people like Ian Harrison, who Tim Nicholls goes down to every 3 months and forks out far too much money, his wife says, for the clothes that he buys, are going to keep doing those sorts of things. But Ian's not going to get too many new customers if we don't do more in terms of bringing that along. Those shops are not going to get new customers and build and employ people, and they employ local people. So that's the other economic advantage that we get out of it. And if it is seen to be a successful and popular location, then that brings the regeneration in the building fabric through that area as well. So we'll see, instead of some of those buildings which are late 80s, early 90s design, I don't know what you call them, I'm no expert in it, but they're pretty tired. They're sort of pinky salmony colour and tiled roofs. I'm not quite sure whether you'd call it some sort of, Southern California shocker or whatever. It's not even Southern California bungalow, is it really? It's just vanilla. It'd be great to see some more activation and activity around that type of construction that is more attractive to residents as well. People want to move in and live there. My dad lives 150 metres up the road in one of those buildings. So, and it'd be great to have more activity around, because it can be so convenient. If you live here, it is so convenient. You don't have to go far to get a bus. You don't have to go far to catch public transport. If you have a car, it is close to the major transport routes. It's close to what we're seeing happen down in Albion around the area around Fox and Collingwood Street and Black Market, which is going through that redevelopment that perhaps is more similar to Montague Road in West End and that sort of area, where we're turning the old industrial radiator repair places into places that people want to go to. So it's got advantages. And the economics of it, I think, are you need to bring people here, and to bring people here it needs to look good and feel good, and that's where I think the design and the architecture comes into it.
Michael?
Thanks. Yeah, I suppose I think of working on Grey Street years ago, and Grey Street in South Bank's in a different situation with a bigger parkland population and all that, but the principle was nobody could get any development going along Grey Street. This is 20 years ago, because no one wanted it. So I'm probably getting it, you have to spend money to make money. It was then decided that South Bank Corporation that they would improve the street part itself. So the things, the canopy structures that run along there, treescape up the central mead and all that were all put in to create a kind of draw card, and it really worked. And you got to a point where developers were competing for sites when only a year before that no one actually put their hand up to do anything. So I guess it does start with, and I'm going to use the word master plan, I hate just saying this is another master plan, but you do have to do one, because you have to have something imageable that the community can celebrate, also that the community has contributed to. Because if you don't, I'm a great believer, if locals don't love the place, then visitors aren't going to either. And if the visitors do like it, like Boston Faneuil Hall, it's a pretty awful place, and it's just something that visitors go to because they think it's a place to go and hate it because it's all full of Tinseltown and then leave. So it's terribly important that locals love and own a place. That will draw other people to it. To do that, you really do need a much higher quality streetscape. I don't really think the traffic is such a problem that it's a killer of the street. There are many really busy roads. I mentioned Lygon Street in Melbourne with probably twice or three times the traffic flows that Racecourse's road that goes gangbusters still along 2 or 3 kilometres of its length. So I don't think the traffic is necessarily a killer. If you took the traffic out and made it better, you'd probably kill the street because its accessibility would have been diminished by that. So I think I would accept that that's the role it's playing, and that's, unless anyone can think of anything more brilliant. But as Tim said, good access to transportation, very central to a whole lot of urban renewal things that are happening, as I mentioned, around in all sort of parts of a triangle. So I can't see why there wouldn't be an interest of a, I hate saying this for council or government, because you'll just say, yeah, you and 20,000 others, but why you wouldn't see Racecourse Road as a pretty special opportunity to create the kind of really classic busy street that doesn't occur anywhere else. And you might do that particularly through very memorable things. So I mentioned turn the road into solar and get notoriety. Create something modest but really well designed that makes people go, whoa, that's a different way of looking at a cafe environment. So it might be James Street Market 20 years on in some new version that you could think of that really would get people thinking about it. And that idea, I think, that Noel kind of started me was thinking about was creating a really different typology of cafe or retail outlet that really worked on a kind of principle that you had street as outside, an interstitial zone that was inside outside, and then the proper inside. It hasn't been done anywhere, and at least not continuously along a streetscape. And you might only need to do it across, perhaps a 40-metre or 50-metre stretch. And I think you'd find it really works fantastically, and then that would bring others to follow and go, hey, this typology is really working. Let's continue this on and extend it, because it does have to happen iteratively. But the catalyst is really important, and largely the catalyst could be a design catalyst, coming back to the subject of tonight.
Yep. Yeah.
Side up there too.
I attended a group of traders. They have coffee over the road here about a month or so ago, and it was really interesting. The council actually have allocated, I think it's $25,000 to help market the street to the public and to help the traders, because they are all small traders, and they're like any one of us. They've got small businesses, they've got to get customers, and it's got to work easily for them and for the customers. And I think that the thing that interested me was that, identified by Harris, actually, the menswear, he said he was finding new customers coming to the street from the CityCat. And they were coming here because he was open certain times. He could actually, he noticed there's another level of custom coming. And I think it'd be good to start to look at some studies about the opportunities of increasing the customers for the local traders, and then they'll improve things if they're doing better business and profitability. So I think the council have got that started, but it's nowhere near enough. And it's nowhere near enough unless you provide good facilities like Michael's talking about, good architecture that people feel as though they're coming to something that's working nicely, like James Street is an exemplar in that regard, and so is the West End Village. They're actually providing modern contemporary outlets for people to enjoy the space, not the old 60s stuff. And everybody wants to be seen, in the best places. Everybody wants to go to the Carlisle Hotel or whatever because it's the latest deal. And we can start providing the latest deal and get people from outside the suburb coming here. Like, you go to the Valley and James Street's buzzing from people everywhere. And I think that's something we can start introducing, and I agree with Tim. The block up at the end of the Gateway side up there, I heard there was a hotel planned for it at some stage. I don't know where that's at, but that'd be a great site for a hotel. Having a hotel near the racecourse is a lay-down misère. What's that? That's all right. So I think mixed use and uses that are complementary are obviously ones that we want to attract.
Thanks, Noel. We'll go to the fourth point. How can community engagement and participation be integrated into the design process to ensure that the regeneration of Racecourse Road reflects the needs and aspirations of local residents?
Well, I think we've covered that. We've covered that, and we've seen that here tonight. And that is, it's essential that the community do have a say and are involved in the process of setting the broad parameters for how the street is going to work. And I encourage that at every opportunity. Back when I was the councillor, and we were dealing with this, we were grappling with this problem equally in 2004. And the same issues arose. It was the length of the street, the nature of the pockets in the street, the challenges in relation to transport and traffic and those sorts of things. So they're not new challenges. And some minor funds were put aside, the trees that went in, and you'll see the signs at either end of the strip and the street furniture that's there. And one has got the horses at one end of the strip, and it's got a picture of some hooks at the other end of the strip, and they were taken from the history of the area. Obviously the horses in relation to the racing at Eagle Farm, which has been going on since the 1860s, and the hook was from the era of the Hamilton Wharves, and you and I were talking about it, Ben, that is working under the hook was what the wharfies did. And so when the cargo was taken off the ships, the nets were around the boxes, and the hooks were what lifted them off the ships and brought them ashore, so working under the hook. So there is the history there and there is the theme there, but that was generated from the local people who came along and said, this is what happened, my uncle worked on the wharves and these are the experiences we had. So I think in coming up with a plan, it is absolutely vital to engage and involve the local community that's here, because, as Michael said, if the local community don't love it, it's not likely that anyone else is likely to use it as well. And people who live in this area do want to see it used and do want to see it changed. It's come a long way from the days of Dada Latarte down where Five Boroughs now is, and the old hardware store where Place Real Estate now is. So, along that journey, it's always had local involvement. So I think local involvement is key to the outcome of it, and early involvement is important before people get wedded to ideas, which is the other thing that I find is that an owner, a developer, an architect or a politician gets wedded to an idea early on, and the rest of the community doesn't like it, and it's very hard to change that course. It's very, very hard to start changing minds. So if everyone starts off with that involvement at an early stage, I think you end up with a far more sympathetic view of the world and a far greater willingness to compromise and to listen to other ideas than you would otherwise do. So I regard it as absolutely essential if we're going to do it, and to make it work and make it work in the most harmonious way. Not everyone will agree, and in fact not everyone should agree. There should be some divergence of view, but if you don't do it early, then you won't get it done very well at all.
Well said, Tim.
There are some large development parcels of land being amassed in Racecourse Road. There's a very large parcel down on the river where the hotel is that you could do a terrific development as the gateway. You've got at the end of the street the racecourse, and the racecourse can potentially, if they want to, be part of the street. The big gates cut the street off and they need to stay there because they're historic. But there may be another way of integrating the street with the racecourse. The racecourse brings massive amounts of people on the weekends. They park all up the residential streets, they're all over the place. And it might be beneficial for them and for the street to actually provide some dedicated parking for the racecourse and open it up. And that would be a fantastic area up there to do markets in behind all the stands. There's some fabulous areas in there, and so that could be brought into the street and it'd be another attractor to the street. So I think and there's other blocks of land that we probably all know about that are in the street that are ripe for development. The developers have purchased them to put them together in larger parcels, and I think the council and the community need to engage with those people so they don't put up monstrosities, that we do get a good outcome for the street in those developments, because the chances of getting bad ones are still very high. And like Tim said, everybody gets wedded to something early. It's virtually very difficult to change it, particularly if you've got a politician saying it's a great idea. The developer puts up this really terrible piece of architecture and streetscape, and you can't do anything about it, or it's very hard to do something about it unless you want to be a litigant, and you've got to be an advocate for good planning outcomes. And I think the issue is that this is now a very critical time, in my view, for Racecourse Road for those things, because of the size of some of these parcels that are evolving.
I'll just also quickly say, don't forget, Noel, the railway station, which is the other sort of link or activation into it. And I mean, I battled for years with Queensland Rail to get it upgraded so that it's actually a destination that looks half smart, but it was half, it was sanded back and left as bare wood for years and years, and it's It's snuck away there, but it could actually enter through the park and bring everyone through that way at the other end as well.
I think that's been the tragedy. It hasn't been optimised. Yeah. I guess I don't have too much more to add. As I said, if locals don't love it, but no one else is going to, is one thing. I think of doing another project I'm doing, which is Cavill Avenue in the Gold Coast, which was exactly that problem. It's become a place where skateboarders love, but not the locals anymore. So the whole exercise that we've done on that was to involve the community in all those discussions to create a place again that, whether for nostalgic reasons or whatever, people wanted to come back to that was in the local community. It's just fundamental to it. If I was the architect for Racecourse Road or for its master planning, it would be generic unless I got knowledge from local people. So the local knowledge would be gold in my head in every respect, and I'd go for every 10 metres down the whole road trying to find out what's historically interesting about this. Is there something there that Tim mentioned? Because those kind of things are the character drivers of a particular place that give meaning that really belongs to that place as against something imposed from somewhere else. So in answer to your question, that's the only way that you're really going to get something that both people love, because they respect the fact that it's been based on very local things, but that visitors will want to come to see because they don't want to see another street that looks like somewhere else. So the local knowledge is just kind of absolutely vital to creating a place that has character and that the outsiders will also revere. Because if you go to any main street in the world, it's always that you kind of love. Something is different, and it's something about that place that may be based on its history or whatever that you're really attracted to. And there's a lot of history in this street, as we know, and that some of the other new main streets, King Street in the showgrounds area, doesn't have a history really, except for the RNA, so they've kind of had to create it. You've got many more assets than that to work with, and I would genuinely consult with the community in order to find out what those are, even the little intricacies that might be there that you could make something of.
Yep. Thanks, Michael. Thanks. The fifth point, before we'll open up to the audience, is what lessons can be learned from other successful examples of cultural, sustainable and economically viable regeneration projects, and how could they be adapted to Racecourse Road?
Well, I think the obvious one that Michael suggested is James Street. It's sort of incredibly successful. I think something that hasn't really occurred too much at the moment in a sustainability sense is community solar hubs, where there's a lot of solar on residential developments, and there's a move now to collect a lot of that stuff that's not used and have a community battery that they can feed into, so that the power companies don't get all the upside, that the community can actually benefit out of these community hubs. And I think Racecourse Road has got a lot of retail. The retailers don't tend to use their roofs for solar, and I think that there's a lot of potential solar collection in the street that could go to a community hub. So there are things that, in terms of energy, that Racecourse Road could certainly benefit from. Look, I think that I just can't think of, like we've discussed West End, and I don't know, there's King Street starting, but it doesn't have a sort of vibrant space yet, except at exhibition time. But it needs all those mixed-use type things to happen to be vibrant. And I think we'd all like to see a vibrancy in Racecourse Road, and it needs to have mixed use to do that. And you need people living here and using it. And so, like I go and buy quite often down at the Italian shop over here, a takeaway and go home, and they're always thankful for the custom because they are a small business. They're all small businesses, and they just want people, and you've got to be people around the place to be able to use them. So.
I guess I'm not necessarily sure that Racecourse Road follows the path of other successful streets in some respects. So Park Avenue at Milton is different from Oxford Street at Bulimba, is different from James Street. James Street, I think, benefited from a couple of things, in that there was a developer who managed to get that. It was the old Coca-Cola bottling plant. And that was a massive site that enabled the first stage of it to go, and then brought in the rest of that development there, and that just powered through it. Whereas Racecourse Road doesn't have that capacity, that one signature site at the bottom of, what's the road that comes down, McCrossan Street that comes down into James Street there, is it? Anyway, we all know the one, you come down. But I think there are facets of it about the community involvement. There are facets about learning about making sure that we can bring the streetscape to the shop front, or the property boundary to the streetscape, and get that involvement between the two. The challenge is, I think, making it work on a street that's 1 kilometre long, that has probably 3 distinct zones, that is bookended by a road that carries 60,000 vehicles a day, Kingsford Smith Drive, and that's also a major freight exporter to the port and the airport and to the Gateway Bridge, but that also services a major weekend generator of traffic, the races, either Doomben or Eagle Farm, and then feeds into a residential area. And I guess that's why people like Michael are the president of the Australian Institute of Architects and can answer these questions far better than I can.
Oh, that's the handover. Thanks for that. I think with other streets, there will be lessons learnt for many of them, and we now got many that have happened in the last 10 years, from James Street through to King Street in R&A, so good to sort of investigate those. I agree with Tim or Noel, who said that you have to be really careful that you don't bring things that work somewhere else into a place where it's not going to work, because that can be the worst thing you could possibly do. So taking a generic approach, I think, is risky, but that doesn't mean there aren't some catalyst or some things that have happened in the way things have happened in those streets that couldn't be applied here. I think of Arbour on Grey, because whether you like it or not, I think it's a 3 to 5 storey limit, isn't it, on up Racecourse Road? But Arbour on Grey, I think, is 4 storeys on Grey Street. No one wanted to do that, so what the corporation decided to do is take a risk and be a partner in it, which meant that once the profits of the retail got above a certain level, the authority took the additional profit, so it let the developer have up to a point, and that was sustainable for the developer. If it went higher than that, the corporation took it, and that was a result of their investment. So there are, a long time ago, but there are innovative models that can get a catalyst development going on these sites, and I don't think you need to be afraid of a biggish site, as Noel said, as long as there is some, if it's bad design, it is bad design. But if you can ensure somehow that there's a really strong design team involved in it, and the developer in that case was a bit beholden to Southbank Corporation because of that arrangement, so the developer had to use designers that the corporation wanted because they had a certain say in it. So to me that could be a really good model for getting a project going that would create a regeneration, and more, when I say catalyst, I mean also a model for what other developments might look like as time went on in this particular street. My only other thing I'd say is it's still got to be unique to Racecourse Road. Whatever you come up with can't be something that one of those other streets, Bulimba or whatever, has got. And as I said, I think you've got fantastic assets in particularly the treescape. And I don't say that lightly, because I go to lots of things when people say, what's the answer? And they go, let's plant more trees. And that's never going to happen in any cohesive way. But you got the trees, they're really fantastic. I see it that way anyway. So this sense of a street that where the architecture responded to its treescape, and I'm thinking pretty natural materials, things like this, that really complemented that treescape and made the public realm and the private realm very kind of synergistic in the way they reacted to each other, could be a really strong definition of what would drive a set of design guidelines for this street in the future. So I suppose I'm summing up by saying, yes, lessons learnt really important, but particularly in economic models of way things happen more than design models. And then design being very unique in response to the particularities of this street.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, Michael's got a very good point here about not trying to pick something else that's already around the place. Brisbane's actually very fortunate that it has so many great places now to go, like South Bank and all the others that we've got, that here I think the success of Racecourse Road will be to find something unique that drives it. It was like Kevin Miller's development down at James Street that started that project, and the urban design, the Maloofs, but also Trevor Reddycliffe, who was really strong about how all that area developed and coordinated it all and advocated certain things, and he was a really good thinker, and like the gateways and et cetera, and not having the road round the front connected. So it was like there were some really good things that happened there that overall contributed. I don't think we should be just copying stuff, because we've got a lot of competition out there, and we already have the land. We have some eager developers with some big blocks of land here, and setting the standard and getting a master plan, how we want the place, I think is where we need to head, because that's what the success of all these others that we've been talking about tonight. I think we've just got to find what is unique, call a genius loci, about our street, and then move forward and get it done.
Thanks, Noel. Do you want to add anything, Tim? Okay. Look, we have a little bit of time before we wrap up proceedings tonight. So if there is anybody from the floor who'd like to ask, I'm taking so many notes, you can see, and I'm really glad this is being recorded, because there are just gems coming out from this stage tonight. So, yeah, if anyone from the audience would just like to ask a question, and just maybe just introduce yourself and ask a question.
I'll just walk this around, so... Thank you, Brooke. Kat from Sec Design. I have a question for Michael, Noel and Tim, and quick questions, but very briefly. Does anyone know the actual road width? Because if it is less than 12.8 or more than 12.8, then yes, you can reduce the width. You can provide more planting and trees. The next one was this idea of the route run and not comparing it to Hastings Street or to other streetscapes. Perhaps it's better to think of it as a bit like, not Hastings, but Noosa Junction. You know, you're going places. On Noosa Junction, you have to go to Noosaville and Hastings, or Noosa Heads, but it is traffic calmed with like multiple places where you have to slow down. The next one was, and this was briefly mentioned, but kind of covered over, when we're talking stories, how many stories? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? Guessing it's not 20. So I'd really love to hear from Michael and Noel on that one. The skips, do we think the centre renewal projects from... Oh, sorry. Do you want me to speak a bit louder?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. First off...
It's a bit too echoey.
We can't hear because the echoes. I'll be back in a minute.
No, I can hardly hear. I can't hear either. I heard the one about the height.
I reckon it'll be around 18
metres.
18 metres.
Okay, so you can traffic calm reduce at that size?
Well, it depends if you want to put bicycles in or not. You've got a lot of things to happen in that road, and you've got motorbikes these days that whip around and do all sorts of stuff that they can do lawfully now that they never used to be able to do.
You can do it. The next one was stories. How many stories are you guys thinking about height?
Well, I've got a view that they shouldn't be any more than about 3 stories. They should be ground and maybe 3 stories. The one up at Beatrice Terrace is the maximum, I would say.
It is the maximum under the plan.
You don't want to be any higher than that, and you the returns to do with the site and the market that you've got to build apartments for. But yeah, that would be the maximum. I'd be thinking sort of 3. I think that one's 4. It's 3 plus ground. So I wouldn't be any more than that. That would be the biggest height that I would entertain along here. There you go, Michael.
Well, first of all, it's currently 3, 4 and 5, 3 to 5 stories along there, so I don't think you're going to get it zoned less than 5 for the ones that have got 5. So you're stuck with it whether you love it or not, and I don't have a problem with 5 stories myself, because I think particularly this side of the street, I think the properties are around 36 metres deep. That could still handle 5 stories with a lower scale frontage fronting the street, so that the high scale isn't smack on the street. So I don't particularly have an issue with that. Economics is going to be the one that's going to make people want to make change. And I think if you're horrified by 5 stories, I'm sorry, but that's really not very high. Pardon? And design quality is everything. It's not the fact that that's the height, it's the way that it's done. And I mentioned one way where you bring it down and create a 2-storey scale to the street, I think could work beautifully. And as I said, the type of typology that I mentioned, just to answer your width one, I think Noel pointed, I don't think there's much you can do footpath widening. I don't. I think just looking at it tells me that that's reasonably tight, what's happening there, particularly for the arterial route use of it. I think a lot more can be made with the zone between curb and boundary than it is currently being made along a lot of the length here. So that's that kind of study that really tries to optimise the use of each square metre, rather than just going, oh, let's make it a metre wider, screw the traffic, and find you haven't got a really good outcome. I just think it's got a pretty good width, and there's a lot more you could do with it than what's happening currently.
And the last question, I was in a project called the Green Street with BCC, and we actually ended up leaving land for art and lunch. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realise about housing, racecourses are sort of counted as green space, but of course they're not typical green space. They are just fields that want to be accessed.
Yep.
From Michael, if I could just, it's not just the height, it's the amalgamation of the frontages. You can't have crossovers every 13 metres a block. You've really got to amalgamate and do some master planning, and that's why some of these bigger blocks are really good for getting a good outcome. No, I was answering the last question. Sorry, the one before this one, but I just wanted to make a point. I don't necessarily agree with your statement. See, what happens here, there's a lot of residential development. So there's a lot of green space around every house. They've got mature trees. It's not like the valley where there's massive high-rise buildings. So they don't need a lot of common green space. There's a lovely park up at the end of the street. There's actually the river. The river's fabulous. You can go down and walk there for miles. There's down at Portside, you've got a fabulous little beach down there. You know, there's lots of things to do here for open space. It's got it. So I don't agree with that one. You can have your next question.
There's a few more hands.
Well, I'll start the answer. I think the issue about pedestrian bridge or bike bridge, it's inevitable at some stage in the future. I mean, the previous government architect, Malcolm Middleton, he was promoting 10 bridges across the river. At this particular point, the height to go over is quite high because you've still got to get sailing boats and stuff up, as you do up into Breakfast Creek and even right up to the gardens. Excuse me. They're talking about bringing super yachts up that far. So the issue about Brisbane having more bridges, I think most of us would agree. We are a river city, and we do need more crossings. What they are, I don't know. Time will tell. But I am a great supporter of more bridges. What was the second question? Oh yeah, the amenity at church grounds. I was a church warden here for 15 years or so, and I still am a regular parishioner here. And the church are looking at how they can activate this space, not by building, but by things like at Christmas time and having activities, using that space outside, looking at whether or not there should be markets there, and all those sort of things. It is a community space. The church is very happy to share it, but it's also a lovely big open piece of greenery. And we have had one developer, and I won't name him, who wanted to buy all the front and put a big shopping centre there. Well, thank goodness we didn't do that, and we wouldn't do it because it belongs to the diocese anyway, and we have to consult with the diocese, whatever happens. But that particular developer, you would not want him anywhere near your place. So I think the issue is that for the moment, I can see this asset to the street being there for a long time from the protection it has.
Thanks. Yeah. What was the first question?
First question
bridges.
was
Yes,
about the bridge
I'm a
tops.
supporter of bridges too, but I think that's a time thing. I think there are other bridges that actually have priority over that connection, but I think in time, brilliant. One problem is the river widens in this portion, the cost goes up astronomically. You know, Goodwill Bridge was built for $29 million once, a long time ago. Kangaroo Point Bridge is around 200 million now. This one you're probably looking at 250 to 300 million, so that's a pretty hard call. But the idea of that is fantastic. I think just if I can make a comment on bridges, it worries me when councils in fact say, oh, put a bridge from St Lucia to West End or whatever on its own. I think they actually have to add up to something. So I've always promoted an idea that Goodwill Bridge goes to Kangaroo Point Bridge, goes to New Farm, and then maybe it goes more towards Hawthorn, and you create these conduits along there for which you then put your major attractions on. So you've got a serpentine river like this. In principle, it's pretty simple. If you could create a linear conduit, that would be a bigger priority than just sporadically putting bridges around. So that's my comment, but ultimately I think that's right. It's probably inevitable that will happen, but I reckon you're looking at 15 to 20 years for that kind of thing. Church grounds, I don't know much how it happens. I've just been listening, but brilliant piece of valuable open space. Coming back to your question, I probably think you're probably right about that quantum when I think about my picture of near map of this area and lack of green spaces. Because you can't get footpath widening, I would be thinking it would be a fantastic idea somehow to find an additional green spaces along Racecourse Road to make it really appealing, particularly for families to come down to it, because families don't necessarily use 3.5 metres of footpath to do anything valuable on. So I do think it'd be good if, I hate going back to governments all the time, buy up some of the shittiest land and create some really new fantastic green space, because that leads to a whole lot of other things about festivities and markets and art events and all sorts of things that can happen that are very communal, that happen in those kind of spaces that don't happen in the street proper, that would be fantastic to create, to re-energise Racecourse Road.
I agree with Michael. Michael's a professor on bridges. He's designed more bridges than any one of us in the world. And the thing about Michael's son,
Yes, well done.
there's another green space.
Tim's just really impressed me. He knows what Carilpa's...
Carilpa Ridge.
What is it?
Somewhat dismissively called knitting needles, but it's a tensegrity bridge.
Thank you.
Structure that holds it up.
Yeah.
I'd agree with Michael that it'd be good to end up with a green space off the spine here. And what might happen is we consider putting another car park up there to relieve some of the pressure under that green space. That's a possibility. I think somewhere there has to be some more car parking in the street to minimise the leakage of all this commercial car parking going into the residential streets. That does have to be addressed, maybe through that idea that might occur.
On the green space issue, I think we need to consider that what was the Brisbane Racing Club's car park is now Ascot Park. So that is a brand new park that has been developed in the last half decade or so by the Brisbane City Council that is now used for concerts, events, parties, holiday time events and activities. So that's added to the green space. And then probably another 600 metres away is Oriel Park, which has traditionally always been the local park of choice for the area, together with then the huge plaza area that arose as a result of the development of Kingsford Smith Drive and the Loris Bonney walkway. Remember, a walk along Kingsford Smith Drive 5 years ago was a dice with death. Now we have that huge plaza that opens onto the ferry terminal, the City Cat terminal, together with a very wide walkway that has many locations to stop, sit and reflect and contemplate, that now is taking us to the pedestrian bridge that will parallel Breakfast Creek and go into the Newstead Gardens. So to take up Michael's point, we are getting connectivity and it's being used. Anytime you go down there early in the morning or in the afternoons, you will see many hundreds of people walking, cycling, running and using that facility. Together with the acquisition that the council is making along Alexandra Road, as Alexandra Road gets down towards the end where the railway line is, people have seen a house there that's been bowled over and a park that's being created there. So land is being acquired by the council to do that. So more land is being acquired, more land is opening up, and I think clever development and proper and smart development planning is making more of that available. And in fact, the architects who did the landscaping for Kingsford Smith Drive won an award for it last year. So there is some real opportunity around those areas and bringing it through. Given that, I'm sorry Michael, anyone who owns land along Racecourse Road doesn't think any of it is shitty land. It's all top value land and council or government is going to be forced to pay top dollar for it. How much more do you want to see in your rates?
Always green.
Everyone wants to go to heaven, no one wants to die to get there.
Hello, Penny Wolf. Thank you. Really value the contribution and the discussion being raised here tonight for our beloved Racecourse Road. My question is around what is the perfect retail mix for retailers to survive day through to night, to be economically viable and also fantastic for our community?
Well, I think if we had the answer to that, we wouldn't be sitting up here talking about architecture and politics. We'd be out there running shopping centres and making sure they were 100% leased and everyone was making a big profit. I think we have, this evening we've covered off on the issues. That is, it's, as a destination, it needs to be attractive for people. How it is attractive to people will mean addressing issues like accessibilities, whether that's people who drive here or people who catch the ferry and walk up to Ian Harrison's, whether it's people coming from the races at the end of a long day and wanting to use the restaurants and coffee shops and bars. Everyone will have a different view about what makes it work, and every retailer will have a different view about what makes their business successful as well. Some will continue to do what they've done since time immemorial and say it's always paid the bills and it's always worked for me, I see no reason to change. Others will be looking for new and innovative ways to deliver. So I guess I don't know the answer. If I did, I wouldn't be in my business.
I just harp back to good design brings people in. Just the Carlisle, that's a focus. The thing is, the market determines what happens. People will not come here unless you've got a really great idea or a great building where they want to be seen in. It's the way of human nature. So you've either got to have something that people want, or you can create something that people like. Otherwise you'll never see them here, they'll be off somewhere else, because there are so many opportunities in this city already happening that are great. So you've got to elevate your thinking, hopefully through design, to get a really good outcome.
I think, yeah, I might just add a comment to that. It's the panacea question. Yeah, I mean, Tim could even back this up with Howard Smith. Well, Howard Smith wharves were discussed before the tunnels, and then the air chutes were coming up. There's heritage listed cliffs. There was access issues, and whatever's come there now, I mean, 90% of Brisbane would say it's great. And they looked at different types of models. They had a bit of a design competition. They had developers come in and worked with the city in a collaborative way. So probably from successful projects that we've seen or been involved in, I really love Michael's comment before, innovative economic models, right? Innovative economic models actually relates to innovative design. And you mar those two together and you create something that no one's thought about. And I think that's...
well, I don't think anyone thought Howard Smith Wharves was going to work for a long period of time.
Yep.
And in fact, the final developers struggled to finance it, as I understand it.
Yep.
But now, so it's got to be a destination that people want to go to. It's got to offer a product that people want to buy, and it's got to be able to be got to in that sense, I think.
Yep.
Thanks, yeah. I'd just like, having thought of that Arbor on Grey model being one way, I think that's really going to be important, because I don't see how people are going to change things unless there's an incentive to do so. And if it can be shared, you set up an authority maybe. I don't know if councils or governments can do those deals per se without being a vehicle that is allowed to do that sort of thing, to share the profits of a development. So I think some innovation that way would be fantastic. In the mix, in the sense of what uses, I really don't know either, because that would be very dangerous for me to say, I think you should do fashion here and cafes here or whatever. But what I would say is that the audience out there is very fickle, and streets can be really popular one day and then the next thing they've moved on to somewhere else. So you have to have a diversity there that gives it a durability. Because if you put your eggs in one basket, you'll find that someone else does another road somewhere, and yours is stuffed because theirs is better. So I think of the fish lanes and things like this. Really, really popular, but fish lane may not be that popular in 10 years' time when other things have happened in South Brisbane that have made it look rather tawdry. So I think you need, and I would say it's interrelated back to design, as has been said, because if it's really fantastic design quality, it'll last and create, as I said, I don't think there's anywhere yet, any of these streets, coming back to a sustainability question, that's really captured a spirit of living in Brisbane. To a degree, I think Fish Lane's a bit Melbourne-esque, and that's why it's really good, because people think it's really great, but then after a while, did it really optimise the climate that we're in, which is why I would love to draw this idea of a indoor-outdoor streetscape model, only because I've thought of it sitting here, and I don't mean it's a moment of genius or anything, but I can visualise something that would be very particular to this street, that no matter what uses were inside it, it would still endure because of the quality of what you're going to.
The quality and uniqueness of the space.
As a space, so that's my answer.
I think we have time for probably 2 more questions. Oh, sorry. No.
I just want to talk about my hobby horse a little bit here. This area lacks a really good seafood market. And we've got the river, and we've got the future development along North Shore. And in my view, Sam's was fantastic. It was like, pretty dumbed down, but you always could go down there and get great seafood, okay? We really can't do that. I mean, the Sam's that are down there now is just nothing like what I think this suburb needs. And I think that you can actually develop down along the riverfront, further down a little bit, but a big seafood market. getting uses that are complementary to this area will bring other people in here, and then they'll come and use this place. Like, as I think about it, the Hamilton Hotel down there, you know, it's got endless potentials about being a Carlisle or whatever, and having these other uses that people will come here for. And then that will generate a lot more things in this street that will answer the question that you originally answered. So I think it's just not this street. We've got to look at the other things that draw people here too. And I think the seafood market's a no-brainer, and we should be working it through. I had dinner the other night with a couple of people that live in Kangaroo Point in Stradbroke Towers and all those pigeon jobs over there, and there's some trawler guys currently operating off the ends of the jetties, which these guys are really upset about because they bring the prawns and stick them in the bins, and it's totally unregulated and a mess. But it's a great idea. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Cairns, but you can go and have a meal off the trawlers, off the trawlers, you know. We need to get a bit of love and fun in these things and find things that we don't have here that we really need. And one is the seafood market.
I was just going to say, anyone want to sign up for Noel's Seafood?
Yes, I'm Hugh Luckhurst-Smith, long-time parishioner here. Actually followed Noel as a church warden more years ago than we'd like to remember. One comment and then a question. A comment is to pick up on the James Street issue. I think it's about personalities. All us locals remembered 18 years ago a Kiwi called Hamish set up a 30-seat little cafe across the road. It boomed into about a 120-seat restaurant, and the whole area around it with the foot traffic buzzed. There's now 63 franchises, none in Racecourse Road anymore, a combination of COVID and, dare I say, an unsympathetic landlord chased him away. So I think when we're looking at it, you can't overlook the advantage of an entrepreneur. That's what made Howard Smith to a certain extent, that's what made James Street, and part of it is the people. But the question I've got, Noel had his hobby horse, I've got mine. As an engineer, I can't think of a worse place in the kilometre of Racecourse Road to have a post office right in the constipated end of the street. And every time I talk to my councillor about all the traffic problems of having 5-minute parking, he says we have to have it because people have to get in to do their mail. Has the council got the authority to say to the post office, you've got 2 years to shift into the middle or some better location because we're going to cancel those parking spots there and make everything from the bus stop through to the river yellow lines, and help. Noel mentioned about we can't avoid it being a traffic route. I cannot understand why we've got 3-hour parking zones on Racecourse Road. I don't see that it adds anything to the retail or anything to the dining. So my hobby horse is, has the council, Tim, as an ex-councillor, got the authority to leverage to fix some of these constipation for the community benefit?
Hugh, firstly, I think Cafe 63's just moved up the road, haven't they?
Hamish doesn't own it, he's gone.
Yeah, but it's a franchise up the road there which is open. But I agree with you, when it opened there, it generated, because they were open 24 hours, it started generating activity. So people from the airport, for example, could go there out of shift and get meals. So it started generating that activity that really gave it a bit of a buzz. So I agree with you, it made a real difference. In terms of the post office, I think the post office is privately owned now, they're franchises. And I don't think the council can say, thou shalt up stumps and move. I'm pretty sure we even in the good old days when I was there, which was 16 years ago, we didn't have that authority. But I do know the issue, and what you're talking about is that parking zone where the post boxes are out the front there, and so when cars come up, you've got the right turn onto KSD and then you've got the left turn onto KSD, and because there's a car park there, you don't get the flow through and you have to wait, and particularly I think that's frustrating for people because you can form 2 right turn lanes to go round. The other issue there, and so that parking does cause a problem, but the other problem with that is the left turn also is held up because of the pedestrian crossing. And so there is, I think, a 20-second dwell time, at least, between the light going green for the pedestrian to walk across and the light then turning green for the traffic to turn left. So moving a car out of the way is not going to particularly address that issue, because you'll still have a car in the left lane stopped waiting to turn left until the walk sign changes. So that's my recollection from that area there. The other, because it's been looked at a few times, and I'm sure David has told you that, because he's told me. So the other issue with parking, and it is a dog's breakfast of parking along Racecourse Road. Retailers have different needs. If someone is going in to get their hair done, they'll need to park for up to 2 hours. If someone's going in to pick up their newspaper, they're going to need to park for 10 minutes. And so different parts of the street have different parking time frames to reflect the different business needs of different retailers who are quite vocal about their needs.
Post offices are near the end of their day in terms of post office boxes, in my view. We have a post box in the city, in the GPO, and we hardly get an email there anymore. And I think the issue is that I know even from the city, they're looking at what they can repurpose all those buildings for. And I think it's only a matter of time before this one down here really gets a tap on the arm and try and fix up what you're alluding to. I agree with Tim. This is one of the major traffic issues down the end of the street. There shouldn't be any car parking down that last piece of Racecourse Road, because you need to get out of there quickly, and there's always a car parked, either pulling in and out, holding up all the traffic, and it's a nuisance, and it's one of the things that's got to be fixed up.
Yeah, we have one final question. Yep.
We just heard about traffic being an issue, which is not surprising considering Racecourse Road has a worse bus service than Noel. So that's quite telling. Also, we've heard a lot about the streetscape along the street, but not crossing the side streets. That's a major issue. You take life on the risk in their hands, crossing side streets. So what about those changes that we need to do in crossing side streets to make it more of a destination as well?
You mean like as you're walking down Racecourse Road, crossing Beatrice or Stevenson or Kent or any of those streets on the way down? Okay. Well, short of adopting what Noel recommended, which was creating a cul-de-sac at the end of those streets, the safety issue at the end of those streets, if there is a safety issue, which will be driven by the records of accidents or incidents occurring, tends to be to put in those traffic islands in the middle of the street, because it breaks the journey into 2 sections. So you cross one section of the road when it's safe to do so, you wait in the middle, and then the next section of the road you cross over when the traffic is cleared from there. That tends to be the solution for small side street issues like that. So other than either closing the road or putting those in, those are the issues that deal with the safety of pedestrians crossing those roads. One of the issues that used to occur in Racecourse Road, which I'm sure people will be aware of, is that there were those raised platforms at either end of the road. There's one outside Vigelli's and one up outside 150 or Baguette, up this end there. And those were actually design features that were put into the road, but they were increasingly used as pedestrian crossings. People thought because they were raised and they had a hump and they had a different surface on them, that they were safe places to cross. And so there was a conflict there. As a result of that, I think the council's removed the road treatment down outside Vigelli's, and that is now a pedestrian crossing, a zebra crossing. Before my time. So they were designed to bookend each end of Racecourse Road as part of the design when it was first put together as a suburban centre improvement program. So their road treatments, they were raised pebblecrete with, I think, bricks in them. I think from memory they had red bricks around them. But they were always adopted as pedestrian crossings. And well, people use them, and then so we put signs up saying, only cross road when road is clear, which you would think you wouldn't have to tell people when they're crossing a road. But because it looked like a pedestrian crossing, people used it as a pedestrian crossing. So ultimately, the council, after my time, removed them entirely and instead replaced them with zebra crossings properly marked so that they could be there.
Zebra crossings, do they? My memory just walking up the street earlier.
There's just two.
Yeah.
And that's across Racecourse Road, not across the side streets. So what's the answer to the side streets? I'm not sure. Maybe you have an answer.
Well, I think the issue about shared zones that I spoke about before, you need to look at those. I like the idea of being able to walk continuously up the footpath and have priority across those roads, because the way Racecourse Road is being used, there's a lot of people that are actually rat running into it, and therefore if a pedestrian's there and they don't have the right of way, they won't take any notice of them, or subliminally they won't deal with them, and they'll just go to turn into the street because they're waiting on a break, and they'll just go. So the pedestrian becomes second priority. So if there was a solution to do that, I think the way it would be is through a shared zone, such as they do up in Noosa. But the thing is, you can't put shared zones all the way down Racecourse Road, because it is a road and it's a distributor road, and the traffic's going to be constant down there, and it's going to increase in the future. So I think it's a fact of life. It's a little difficult to get up the perfect solution, and the one that Tim spoke about was a shared zone, and pedestrians thought it was theirs, but the road guys thought it was theirs too, and that's why that sign went up. And that's what you've got to deal with, shared zones, and you've got to educate the people that are going to use them and decide who has priority. I started off this talk tonight saying Racecourse Road, the cars have got the priority. I can't see of any way of changing them, because everything feeds into Kingston Smith Drive through this road.
Can I just interrupt? Would you be able to come forward so I can just hear you a bit more clearly? Because it sounds like this is one for me. And maybe you could just sort of come to a conclusion. Have you got a question or is it a statement? Because I'm just wondering whether there's a question we can answer. Okay, well, I think there's a few things there. So, I mean, Racecourse Road has changed dramatically over a lengthy period of time. A long time ago, it was an industrial road that just had industrial sheds and businesses and not much else. And then in the 80s, it started transforming and we started seeing some restaurants come up. And I mentioned one of them, which I just happen to remember because it was a favourite of mine, called Dada La Tarte in an old house. Does people remember that? Which was really probably the start of it. And there was Baguette up one end that Francis and Marilyn ran. And there was the hardware store on the corner there that Chris ran upstairs, and he had all his gear in it. And there was a BBC supermarket and a relatively small supermarket. And that was it. There were no coffee shops. There was no particular parking or other issues, and it was just a road you went down to get to the wharves, down to Brett's, which was still the Butterboard and Brett's Wharf, and turned right at the Hamo, and most people from here never went to the Hamilton Hotel. You know, and that was it, because you get your head punched in. So
The Shark Bar.
well, it is. It did. And then in the late 80s and the 90s, in the late 80s and the 90s, it started changing around, and it became more gentrified because it was the first of those suburban centre improvement programs. And we started seeing a little more of the cafes and the coffee shops and those sorts of things occurring. And that then saw more developments occurring as well. So we saw the housing and the apartments being built here in some of those old houses. We've still got some of the old houses, but a lot of them have been sold, including where the 4-storey concrete brutalist design, I suppose, is on the corner there. And so that's changed it again. Tony's, who used to be on the corner there, is gone. The Bendigo Bank that was there for many years has gone, so it's changed, and it will continue to change. Racecourse Road will continue to evolve. Ian Harrison is probably one of the longest serving businesses there, and has been there for 30 years plus. So in answer to your question, it evolves and it continues to need to evolve, and tonight I guess we're exploring what is the best way that it does evolve and what can we do to make sure that your friends from Rockhampton who came down still feel it's an attractive destination for them to come to. It can't be all government. It's all private property. We can't tell people what to do with their private property. They have to make that decision. We can set some design guidelines, we can set height guidelines, we can create a precinct for sure. But if the fellow who owns the corner site says, I don't have the funds to do this, or it's not economically viable for me to do it, or I'm happy just earning an income from the rent from the tenants who are there and I don't need to do anything else, I don't want to take a risk, it's a high interest rate environment, I'm not sure what the retail world's going to be like in the next 2 to 3 years, we can't force it. So we can set governments, planners, architects can set parameters and we can set some boundaries, but we can't force. And I think that's what we're trying to talk about tonight, is how do we set the best boundaries and what's best for doing that, and taking on board issues like Hughes parking issue, Noel's fish market, crossing the roads and connectivity are the ways that we can make it more attractive for those businesses to re-establish themselves or for new businesses to come in, and that will be part of the challenge as well. As 18 years ago when Cafe 63 turned up, they saw an opportunity, and there will be other opportunities for others to come along. As Grilled has come along, as Jan Gokes in Savita continues to operate from her new premises. The new restaurant at the end there, Dickie's, the vegan restaurant, seems to be going gangbusters from everything I can see. It's always busy when I go past it. It's very popular. And that's seen the refurbishment of that corner of the shops there, including, I think there's a Pilates studio there as well. And so it will continue to change, and that's what we're about talking about.
I believe Hamilton.
I'm right.
Look, this was organised tonight as part of the Asia Pacific Architecture Festival by Comore as a way to get the conversation started. I think it's a wonderful, turnout. I know it's a bit cold out there and we've had a few less numbers than that signed up. But I definitely think that from the tone of the conversation tonight and what you've heard from the panellists themselves, that there is a reason to continue this conversation and actually get something happening. So I'm happy to discuss with anybody who's got an idea for where they could have it, you can come and talk to me afterwards. But I think as far as the event goes, we are a little bit past our bedtime now. And I would like to thank everybody for turning up today, and I would like to particularly thank Ben as our moderator for this evening, but our panellists particularly.
Our panellists.
And as a little bit of an appreciation for your time and efforts and your long answers to our questions. Oh, he gets a pat on the back and probably a lunch some other time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Tim, this is for you. Thank you very much. And Noel, thank you very, very much. Appreciated. So I hope everybody got out of tonight what they were hoping to get out. Please, I'm happy to hear from you, as is Focus or any of the panellists, if you've got any future discussions or want to continue this conversation. But everybody have a good evening. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, good to see you.
Reasonably good session.
Yeah, no, it's good. Excellent. So, look, I think it is like, I'm going to take this off.